Hi, Jim.
Hi Pam, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Hi Bob. Good, good. Hi Austin.
Hey, good evening.
Hi Mike.
Hey guys.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Hello everyone. This is Planning Board for February 14th, 2024. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Pam, you want to take attendance?
Sure. Michael Gore,
Here.
Austin Gromer,
Here.
Eric Nyland is absent. James Barr,
Here.
Bob Romer,
Here.
Michael Lau.
Here.
We have 5 members present.
Okay. Light agenda tonight. That's great. Item 1 is to review master plan implementation goals. So Pam, how do you want to do this?
It's a good question.
So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look at these. I know there's a lot. So I mean, essentially, do you want us as a board at some point to sort of prioritize the things we want to look at, or is this
Right now, eventually, yes. Right now, the master plan is finalizing these implementation goals, and then we'll be assigning the different goals to specific committees, boards, or staff. And a lot of these will be assigned to the responsibility of the planning board. So we want to do a few things, make sure you're aware of them. You don't see anything that's alarming, or that we didn't miss anything that you have found to be important that needs to be addressed, and make sure that we include it in the chapter.
Yeah, I mean, I looked a lot at the housing ones, and I remember talking through those in the workshop stuff. So I mean, that looked pretty comprehensive to me. And I think as a board, there's certainly things we should prioritize above others, but I don't know that we need to get into that tonight. So again, it was maybe Bob, you have thoughts on if there's what you want the board to sort of do with these goals, or maybe you can talk about what the committee is doing with them. Are you going to pare them down at all, or?
Yeah, we've gone through them multiple times, and haven't assigned, well, we've assigned some preliminary priorities, but that's the most important thing, eventually, to identify who would be tasked with fulfilling a particular activity or an implementation, and then what its priority is. And that's where the planning board needs to review it. And then what the difficulty, the challenge, the cost would be of implementing it. So, there are basically 3 things that'll come out of once the specific activities and implementations are identified. And I think we've done some of that now, but we certainly haven't shared it with the organizations who ultimately would be responsible, whether that's committees, commissions, boards, or the town staff.
Yeah, ultimately, the master plan is under the planning board's jurisdiction, so we will bring this before you when it's a completed document and ask you to vote and give your blessing of approval. So we also want you involved as this process moves forward. So this is as much as an FYI as it is to get any additional input that you find necessary.
But eventually, the planning board, as I said, along with other boards, will be responsible for going over it fairly carefully, particularly with those actions that fall within its purview as a board, and identifying what its priority ought to be, what its difficulty ought to be, and make sure that the language in the implementation matrix is appropriate and consistent with what the board sees.
What's the time horizon for the master plan? Is it supposed to look like 10, 15 years out? Is that sort of the time frame?
well, it's, 2035 is what we're looking at now. The near term deadline is June 30th. That's when we would like to have it done. It was originally going to be an 18-month effort. It's now 4.5 years.
Yeah.
We're all getting a little tired.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm, once this is complete, I'm hoping that we can certainly pick, hopefully some near-term items that we can pass as bylaws for next year. Or things to investigate that make sense to the board.
Well, I
It
think one
seems like-
thing I haven't done that we need to do is take the list that Pam put together and her predecessors and make sure that those are appropriately incorporated in the implementation plan.
I mean, were there any items on this that you wanted to talk through tonight, or
No,
again?
why don't we, I'm sorry, I didn't have it sufficiently prepared ahead of time, so why don't we take some time to digest it, and then maybe we can go through it, chapter, maybe by chapter, just to break it down, so we're not reviewing a 10-page document in
Yeah.
one meeting, kind of randomly, so, and a lot of these you're aware of, and we're actually already working on the Fafford recommendations, so we'll see some things that may even be ongoing, which is good.
Yeah, and we've done that with a master plan committee. Actually, the last two meetings, we've gone over it as a group, line item by line item, which was painful but useful.
Well, and I think if ultimately you guys, the committee at least puts a priority of things you think are most important, because I mean, we have the data from a few workshops at this point about what people were asking for in those, right?
Oh, yeah, yes. And we'll certainly do that.
Yeah. I mean, that can at least help us as a board. We set our own priorities and understand what people are in favor of and what they're against, I guess.
Yeah, and
Okay,
the
so-
overall implementation matrix is basically has to be reviewed by everybody to make sure that we're consistent. We generally agree on priorities, because ultimately it's going to be a dance to go through what the priorities are, what the implications of the priorities are, what the cost of the priorities are, both to the town and to the community. And so, yeah, we'll have to go through that pretty carefully as a group and look. I think the planning board has to look at more than the things that neatly fit into planning space. There are a lot of other things that planning will impact, and vice versa.
Yeah.
A lot of climate change, a lot of transportation, just, a whole range of things.
Okay, so I guess the goal is for everyone to kind of review this document. If you have questions about things, and again, not everything in this document will necessarily apply to the planning board. Some stuff will overlap. I mean, things like, economic development, obviously, we're probably not the driver of that, but, a lot of those things would involve zoning changes and things along that line that we would be involved with.
There is a remarkable amount of overlap.
Yeah.
And MGL assigns responsibility of the master plan to the planning board.
The overall document.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so if everyone can kind of read through that, and Pam, maybe for our next meeting, we pick, a section that we kind of talk about, or do we want to wait for Bob? When are you going to have your recommendations in that? Is that the June date, or do you guys have that
I mean,
before?
I think we're at this point in terms of the topical element, not necessarily priorities and difficulty. They're pretty much there already. And
Okay.
so I think it would be very well worthwhile to go through that as it now stands, without waiting for the master plan to come up and the committee to come up with their recommendations on priorities, difficulty, et cetera. Pam, would it be appropriate to would it be easy to put that up for the planning board in the drive and have us, that's basically what we did, Michael.
Yep.
With the master plan, we put it up and overwhelmed it with comments, but I think we're reasonably settled at this point. So it's time for the planning board to overwhelm it with comments.
Okay. Yep. I think, yeah, if we add it to the Google Drive and then we can all add comments there. That would be great. Okay, anything else that we want to talk about on this item tonight?
Nope. Well, progress, one of the things that's going on right now is that Pam and Olivia Knightley from BSC are meeting with the individual department heads within the town staff to get their perspective and recommendations, sort of as a second check.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, we just have a few departments left. But we're well over halfway complete, probably.
That's great. Okay, the next item is the land use planning grant cluster development.
I just wanted to let you know that we had some extra funds in the grant award because the Commonwealth gave us a little extra. They gave us a total project of funds for $7,000. So our match is being utilized to evaluate the cottage overlay district in our last attempt to change the zoning bylaw. So we were amending the scope to add that, and Randall will be working on evaluating the work that has been done to date and making suggestions on things we can do to achieve the goals that we've identified, as well as address the public to kind of garner more input into the bylaw changes.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to him reviewing the cottage bylaw. I hadn't read that in several years. I don't know if anyone else got a chance to read through that, but I don't know, Pam, did you get a chance to look through it and have any kind of preliminary comments on?
No, I haven't gotten a chance to look through it yet.
Okay. I mean, even looking at it now, I look at it, I was like, it was a good bylaw. I'm surprised it didn't pass. It's too bad, because I think that's the kind of housing stock that people see it and they like it. So again, yeah, maybe we just need to present it better next time. But
we spent a lot of time on it. We talked to realtors, we talked to builders.
yeah,
so we'll see.
yeah, I think we can get it passed again the next time.
Yeah, we also
and-
forwarded him the previous you had a PowerPoint presentation in there and some brochures that were previously created. So that was all forwarded to him as well. And that'll be part of the information he reviews and comments on.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric,
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
No. Go ahead, Bob.
Eric, did you have any public forums on that?
We definitely did. Yeah. I mean, we always have the public forum in, February, March timeframe, just that we need to do to review any bylaw changes. And I think we had an outreach before that. We had two major outreaches. Kind of one, as Eric said, is we invited a number of like industry people, so builders, realtors, to bring them into the thing, because one of the problems was with so for people that are new on the board, we made something called the village overlay district. And the point of that was to get kind of mixed use development where you have retail on the bottom and housing on top. And you see that in lots of, downtowns. Like there's, if you go down to like Hudson, where they built some of those apartments across from the bike trail. It's like, again, same thing. You've got retail on the bottom, housing on top, and it's just a popular model. You can go to lots of different towns, and that's what people like. And so we, years ago, we made I think it's, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's the mixed use village overlay. And we spent all this time on this bylaw, did it all, and to date, not a single developer has used it for anything. So we created a bylaw and no one came, basically. So with the cottage overlay, we said, okay, well, we don't know if it was a mistake with the bylaw, but no one, or it's just the properties that are available, but because no one's built it, we said with the cottage overlay, we actually want someone to take this and develop something with it. And so we said, well, let's get builders in and talk about like what it would take, what they liked or didn't like in our bylaw. And so we worked with them a lot on density bonuses about what would make sense to, entice them to build smaller, more dense housing. What would it do? And I think they gave some really good, candid feedback, and we made adjustments based on it to the point that they said, yeah, we would build on this if this bylaw were available to us. And so that was kind of the industry outreach we did. And then I'm sure we certainly did the public, just the regular public meeting hearing for the bylaw. And I can't remember if we did a separate public one as well. Eric, maybe you remember, but. So again, it was, I feel like we did do a lot of outreach with it. And it was, again, I do think it was mostly the water concerns that tanked it ultimately. And if we have a better answer to those this time, then hopefully, it's just not an issue.
What were the water concerns?
Basically, people were saying, okay, I have my house here and I have my well on it. And if someone builds, like a 30 or a 40 unit cottage next to it and they start sucking up all the groundwater, or is my well going to run dry, basically? And this is always kind of a concern. I mean, because everyone in town is on private wells, and personally, I don't have a good answer to any of those questions. I mean, I have no background in that, and so I mean, I don't know. We're putting in this gigantic apartment over on Main Street now, and it's using private wells. Now, if we had tried to do that ourselves, I'm sure people would have complained about it, but it was a 40B, so there's nothing they can really do about it.
I wonder, are
Yeah.
there examples of these kinds of cottage overlays, and historically have there been issues with the butters? I mean, is there data to support that this is a problem in Massachusetts? Or
Well, so there's definitely, even when we presented the article, we showed other towns that had similar cottage overlays. Now, again, the problem with Bolton is everybody's on private water, and that's not as common, especially, a lot of the examples we probably cited were closer in towards Boston. I think there might have been one developed in Concord that we used. And if a lot of them have public water and public sewer, it alleviates any of those concerns.
right? Okay.
But there's no reason, Mike, why you can't ultimately require a hydrogeologic study that addresses that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. So yes, so for sure, now that we know that was a concern of people, we would address that up front and possibly in the bylaw somehow. So yeah.
But you have to get an enormous draw in order to start drawing down other people's wells.
But we're talking about the same amount of draw, whether it's just more condensed.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, because with the current zoning, you could only build fewer houses on a given plot or in the town in general. So, I mean, I guess there are concerns about it, but I mean, I don't understand you know, what the water table is and if where my well is in relation to my neighbors on either side of me. Like I honestly just don't know about that stuff. So getting, if, you know, if we were able to get some knowledge about it, or maybe this is something that, you know, one of our peer engineering reviewers had, you know, could have feedback for us on when we craft the bylaw, that would definitely help.
Well, it's 3 years ago, actually more than that, the Little Water and Sewer Task Group in the master plan spent a lot of time with engineers. And did obviously picked up all the information in the state database of every well in Bolton. So we have a reasonably good idea of where the water table is. And spent a lot of time talking to people who drilled or who built gravel wells, non-drilled wells, as well as hard rock drills, and they were not terribly concerned. Of course, it depends on where it is, but that information, there's an enormous amount of information out there.
So that's interesting, Bob. So in that well study, do they know the depth of the wells or just that?
Yep.
They do, really?
Yes.
So anecdotally, I've heard that people either when they build new or some people run additions in town where, I mean, my well is probably 100, 150 feet, something like that. And I've heard of people having to go way, way deeper now when they, and I don't know whether that's just code requirement or that's what they need. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert in it. We used to have, I forget what her name was, but she was a water expert who used to be on the board, and she was great at, you know, answering questions like this. And,
well, the two things that have happened in Bolton with respect to wells that need work. One of them is for hard rock wells where the water comes through crevices in the rock. It picks up mineralization and it seizes it up. And so I'm not sure everybody knows this, but the solution to that is fracking. And there's a lot of fracking of wells in Bolton. Basically going down and pressurizing just the way you would a gas well in Pennsylvania, and opening up those fissures again to do it. So that's one issue that comes up, and that's the way it gets resolved. The second one is people talk about 400-foot wells, and there's this shock and amazement. I mean, the water table has dropped that far, and the answer is no, it hasn't. What's happened is that instead of putting very large capacity storage in their house because they're using substantial amounts of water primarily for lawn irrigation, the way to develop that capacity is drill a really, really deep well. And then you have all the volume in the column of water in the well. And that is the primary reason that big wells get drilled. And people say, well, I drilled it because I'm running out of water. Well, we got to explain why you're running out of water. And so the well gets drilled and the capacity goes up and it fills in at 2 gallons per minute for whatever the night is. And it's all available in the morning or whenever you need it. It's just a matter of reserve capacity.
so it sounds like you have some good experience in this area then, Bob. So I mean, that's great, right? So we'll
we
lean
do
on
know a
you
lot
and-
about the aquifers. That's other published data. And the
Yeah.
public water supplies are all very clearly identified by DEP. And they're all out there with all the statistics about them, the monthly testing, as well as the initial drilling and yield and so forth. And then the aquifers. And the aquifer, there are 2 major aquifers in town. Something I think we need to think about doing a little land banking to make sure that we have them. But the one that is by 110 towards the flats there's so much water in that when Lancaster drilled their expanded well field a couple of years ago, they actually had an artesian well. It actually came up above the ground. They didn't have to pump at all. So but there's an awful lot of water down there.
Was getting back to sort of the goals and master plan. I mean, is documenting or I mean, so everything you're saying to me that's great. Like, I have no idea. I wouldn't know where to find any of that data. Is there any sort of like central repository that, the
Yeah.
board could use, or?
Yeah, I can, just out of, if you're interested, we wrote a pretty long semi-final report with references to all the documentation. And I'll be glad to dig that out and distribute that.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great for not only the board, but I know people obviously people in town have those same questions. So, I mean, being able to point people to that sort of information would be great. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
those things alleviate people's fears about something like a, cottage development. And again,
Right.
the cottage development, we're talking, I forget what the maximum number of units was, but it was 40s to 50s maybe, right? I mean, we're not talking about that apartment where it's 200 apartments or whatever the number is.
Well, I think we also need to keep in mind where an awful lot of our water is going, and that is to lawn irrigation. And when you have more compact housing, you don't have anything like that in the way of water use per unit.
Yeah, definitely true.
Is there
Okay.
some kind of estimate for what, a 30 or 40 unit development would use? I mean, in terms of water needs?
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, if you just look at it from a residential use, not any kind of irrigation, I mean, those statistics are definitely available. And I'm sure that Neshoba Associated Boards of Health have that for all the towns around us, so it would be a pretty good representation. I know that anybody who is working with a public water supply or public sewage, and Lancaster has that, and they've been great in sharing their information. Turns out that one of the people on the board is also an engineer who orchestrated a lot of this, and I spent a lot of time talking to him, not only about where it is, but what it would cost to distribute it. So to your point, Mike, yeah, there's a lot out there, and we probably need to spend some time working, with the master plan, but with the Board of Health, distributing that information and making it public in a layman's perspective.
Yeah, no, that's terrific, Bob. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, we got a little off topic there on
Sorry.
the plan. No, that's fine, because that tied right into the cottage overlay. But so Pam, do we know when Randall was gonna get back to us, or we
No,
just
I,
told him it was
I
approved
don't. I
and-
think he's on vacation for a couple more weeks. I have to check the schedule.
Okay. Okay. I mean, no rush on that for this year anyway, but hopefully have that ready to go for next year.
Incidentally, there's a major milestone with that whole thing. It's the first time in my experience of 45 years of dealing with them that the state has ever given anybody more money than they asked for.
I
Yeah,
recall
that's-
getting a refund of state tax, was it last year or the year
Yeah.
before? That was the
Sure.
only time I've ever gotten one.
Okay, the next item was approval of minutes, and I think I just saw the January 10th
Yes, that's
meeting
correct.
minutes in there. Okay. Other than a typo at the top of it with the members present for Jane's Bar, in addition to Jane's Bar, it looked that looked good to me. So, unless anyone has questions, I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from January 10th, 2024.
Second.
Michael Gore,
Aye.
Eric Nyland,
Aye.
James Barr,
Aye.
Bob Romer,
Aye.
Michael Lau,
Aye.
and Austin Groner. You were absent that meeting, so we'll do an abstention. Okay, the minutes passed by a vote of 5-0.
Next item was other business. Pam, you have a planners report or anything else you want to share with the board?
I'll just give you an update on the Derby Field project. Consultant actually has already completed preliminary proposals about the redevelopment of the field with resilient turf. They've incorporated a walking path around the perimeter, fencing around the field, at least at the north and south side where the goals will be placed. There's a edible garden with walking paths and some gathering areas.
Hey Pam, do you
And-
have sorry to interrupt, do you have like any like preliminary concepts or pictures of
Yep,
maps
we
of what
have
they're
some,
showing?
sure, we have, I can pull them up if you want to give me a
Yeah,
few
if-
minutes.
Yeah, if you could share that, that would be great. Because
Okay.
I don't know if you know, some of the newer people know where Derby Field is. It's called Derby Field because that's what it was during when the Bolton Fair used to actually be in Bolton.
They're actually mostly utilized by the school, the field area.
Yep,
Hold on one second.
Is that by Trinity Church?
on the other side of it.
Okay.
So where they're gonna put the apartment complex, like there's a senior senior living facility there, and these are the fields that are kind of behind it, and in between that and the Florence Sawyer School.
So
Easier
the
to see that
project
map.
team met today to review and provide comments back to the consultant. He'll review them and provide us with feedback, and then the next step would be to schedule the public forum and gain additional input from the community. So I'll obviously notify you of that. And the town is in the process of applying for 2 additional grants to advance the project to the construction stage.
The other parts of that, you mean?
I'm sorry, what's that?
For the lighting of that field? Was that one of the?
Lighting's incorporated. The MVP program probably wouldn't pay for that, so we're looking into other options.
And if Pam, if you don't have that map readily
All right.
available, you can send it out later on, that's fine.
I have it open. I'm just trying to get it up on the screen. Okay. So up to the north is where the existing cul-de-sac is. This is the north side of the field. We're proposing to replace all of the soils with soils that are contain better drainage. These are, I think, were a result of leftover agricultural use that was just kind of leveled off and turned into a field. So we're going to improve the soils and then use a field resilient turf grass, natural, not artificial, on the playing field to hopefully it'll be increase the durability. It's a very highly used field. And then on the bank over here by the parking lot, there's a proposal to do seeding into the grade, so it'd be built into the hillside. Here's the edible garden to the east side of the field, and this would be a walking path, and there's things like strawberries and native vegetation that are climate resilient. There's eventually going to be an irrigation evaluation of the wells to see if they can service the field. There's a shed right here with a wellhead, but the condition of that well is not known, so we don't know if there's sufficient water supply to irrigate the field. The field would be surrounded by fencing, and then the walking path goes around the field, and there's some trail connections to the existing trail systems to the southeast and the northeast of the field.
Do you have a picture that shows this kind of on like pulled back so we can see where it is. In
oh, like a
reference.
more of a locus.
Yeah,
I can just,
I think the left side
Let's
is,
Google.
this left side's a school parking lot and the top
this-
is probably,
so this is the field directly behind Florence Sawyer then? It's not the
Yes.
one
Yeah,
over by it's not the one by the sewage treatment plant?
no,
no,
no.
Okay,
it's directly behind the school. There's a field
Okay.
there. It's just worn out.
yep.
It's highly utilized and a lot of it's bare ground. So the parking lot's right here. This is the existing riprap. There's a retaining wall type slope that's existing on the edge here.
Yeah, this is gonna be great.
And things like scoreboards and lighting are all going to be incorporated into the plan, but there'll have to be a prioritization in accordance with the funding that's available and what type of grants that the town is eligible for.
Pam, it might be worthwhile at some point. I'm not sure that you've seen it. Well, it's up on the drive. The focused area analysis that we did of that whole area as a pilot. We did an overlay of a whole bunch of issues, water ownership, zoning, et cetera, for a quadrangle that was southwest rather, of the intersection of 117 and 495 over to Wattaquatic and then back down through South Bolton Road, that incorporated all of that, the schools, et cetera, so that it gave you a bigger picture perspective of how the trails, roads, ownership, et cetera, fit together, into which this fit. So it might be interesting just to let the board see what had been done in that one pilot program.
Bob, you said that's up on the drive now?
Yeah, I believe it's in the master plan
In the
drive.
master plan, okay.
Yeah. It's in land use under focused area analysis, and there's a whole folder with all of the individual overlays in that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
But it's something that I think as a planning board, we need to take a look at. It sure opened our eyes, not so much in surprise, but in learning of what was in there and who owned it and what the implications were to usage as a result of public water supply limitations and a whole bunch of other things. So that if we were looking, for instance, at an overlay in the area of Forbush Mill across from the high school, that whole area, I think it would be very worthwhile for us to run that kind of a focused area assessment so that we as a planning board understood what was there and what could be done with it from a whole range of perspectives.
Okay, Pam, was there anything else you wanted to?
Goose Pond Path submitted a very preliminary draft of their as-built and street layout plans for road acceptance for the annual town meeting. I gave him a list of items that the plans were deficient in, and he should be able to get them added to the plan and submit it in time for placement on the warrant. So
Okay, and you
Randy
gave-
Randy
yeah.
and I will begin the punch list as soon as the weather allows.
Okay,
What
Great.
were the major ones on that one?
The major
Like what some of the punch list items?
we didn't do the punch list yet. I'm not sure what's going to be on the list. But
the
as
things
far
on
as the road,
as-built, yeah,
as the as-built plans, he
Sorry,
didn't
yeah,
have,
yeah, on the as-built, my bad.
it's just things like he didn't have station references some of the grades were missing. And there wasn't a verification from the engineer or the surveyor as to the accuracy of the actual construction versus the design plans.
Alright, so you don't see, there's no hiccup? Do you see any hiccup on?
I after everything going on with other things, I hesitate to say.
Yeah.
But
okay.
from
Right.
what I have heard and read in the inspection reports, that this development went through pretty smoothly and there weren't
Yeah,
a lot
that's-
of issues with the construction.
Okay, yeah, I was, okay.
Yep, this one was pretty smooth. Okay, anything else, Pam?
No, those are the two bigger items.
All right, anything else that people on the board want to talk about?
Oh, just so you're aware too, the Keys Farm subdivision, Hanover asked for an itemized list on what we would be using the revoked bond for. So we're working with Niche Engineering to create a list similar to what we did with Century Mill Estates to create an itemized punch list with associated costs. We're waiting on an estimate for the creation of that list. Their peer review fund doesn't have adequate money, so we're gonna have to use procurement of service funds from the account and then get reimbursed when we collect the bond from Hanover.
Is Hanover responding now?
They have communicated with our attorneys and they have requested a detailed list of what we would utilize the bond for. And that's a typical request. Usually you would submit that when you request the bond revocation. So it's nothing unusual that they've asked for.
Okay,
Okay. So if there's nothing else anyone else wants to bring up, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Good
I
enough.
think our next meeting is the 28th. So we will talk then.
great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Have a good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam.
Have a good night.
Bye.